The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.
That one, and still some in there. Silver. Right, Barney, watch and learn. I'm not sure if this is worth a picture. It's not going to appear in any Martha Cooper graffiti book anytime soon, but hold on, a bit more there. Right, stand back. Let's see what Barney thinks. What do you think, Sabarkalot? Let me get a picture. Hold on. All right, lights. Not too good yet, but here we go. F2, 1/2/5, ISO 1250. What do you think? Huh? I know you have your own way of marking territory, but this, Barney, this is how street artists or graffitiists do it. It's called tagging. That is your tag. What do you think? Is that the silence of being in awe at my art? Or do you just want me to go and heat up your chicken? Tell me the truth. Chicken, then.
The Forward.
Come on. Come on. Yes, we're back, walking, the two of us, Sabarkalot and I. He's drinking every single drop of a puddle that he can find. Oh, it's a horrible habit. Must be something nice in the puddles. He clearly likes it. I've always been really interested in street art. There was a kid at school, and even when I was writing these notes out, I still can't remember his name. He was in my art class, though. Come on, what was his name? I sat next to him for ages. I went to his house, had tea with him. I can picture the house. Can you? No, Neil, I can't. Oh, it might come to me yet, but it's not on the notes. But he was he was the kid that everybody wanted to draw and paint and create like. Come on, pups, this way. Always found a scent. You see, this is the thing about going out with Barney, isn't it? Oh, who's that, Barnes? Hey? Who's that? Come this way. It's a train. I know. It was the kid at school that everybody wanted to draw and paint and create like. If you said, draw me a Marvel Comics character, he'd come up with one on the spot that you'd never seen before. And actually, once he created, on the blackboard this is, in the art classroom, a really good villain character that was aimed squarely at the chalkboard rubber-throwing Mr. Norbury, who I've talked to you about before, my art teacher, haven't I? The one that could catch you on the side of the head with a board rubber without even looking up. From 10 metres, perhaps more. Neil, what century did you say you went to school in? I know it does sound a bit Victorian, doesn't it? But it didn't take long for Mr. Norbury to work out who'd drawn this, in that none of us could even light a candle to his skills. Daniel, I knew when I started, even when I read my notes back, I couldn't think of it. But now, Daniel, second name, Daniel. So he was caught red-handed, was Daniel. Now I can remember at least his first name, which is, and you'll never appreciate just how much I smiled as I noted these thoughts down to read to you, because not only is this absolutely true, but it's probably the most connected foreword to the show that I've ever written. So let me start again. He was caught red-handed, and the same literally when he was found spraying a very rude, but really quite an impressive creative symbol, which we'd know now as a tag, on the white cricket screen on the sports field, or the top field as we used to call it at school, just up from the main assembly hall. One Friday night, one fateful Friday night, during the end of term school disco, under what he thought was the cover of darkness. And that earned him a school suspension And also he had to repaint the entire cricket screen himself when he got back. And if you don't know what a cricket screen is, it's a big white screen so you can see the bowler coming towards you that you put behind the batsman, behind the crease. It's about 4 metres by 5 metres. Took him ages because it needed multiple coats. But was it vandalism or was it art? See, I'm fascinated by graffiti. And I know that some may not see this as art, and we'll cover that in the conversation because there are graffitiists that would rather be known as vandals above artists. But I remember taking a picture many, many moons ago of a certain stenciled girl with a balloon. Ah, we know the one you're talking about, Neil. Now, I had to look the date up. I don't think I saw it in 2002, or took a picture of it in 2002 when it went up on the embankment. But then the one in Shoreditch came after it, and that was 2 years later. And I'm sure by then I was photographing far more. And this is one of the earliest pictures of my new interest with photography that I made. So was it there maybe in 2003? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, it's plausible that it was a picture I did make 20 years ago, I think. One of my very first somethings and nothings. The girl with a red balloon that was stenciled by the one and only Banksy. So today we talk about graffiti. And one of today's special guests, because there is another surprise guest, talks about graffiti and its and his relationship with photography, which all sounds very, very BBC Arts programme language, I know, but he has been a driving force in the art, and in the latest book featuring the work of Martha Cooper, former New York Times photographer who decided to dedicate much of her life to documenting this underground, not so underground art. We talk about graffiti and this book.
Today on the Photowalk.
Spray Nation dives deep into Martha Cooper's archive. It shows what's happening in New York City in the early 80s. And it's a must for any fan, including anyone interested in photography, just because it's a great fucking piece of art.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today those stories come from the graffiti and street art historian Roger Gastman, the photojournalist Kieran Doherty, former punk rocker, now photographer John Mayer, and a special walking guest to be revealed. Plus, of course, you. It's a unique, special kind of photography podcast, made from the letters you send in, the thoughts you have, and words from our special inspirational guests. Whatever you photograph with, be it a digital, film, smartphone, and here's our strange camera of the week, the Avant-Garde Optics Very Yellow Smiley Face Brooch Spy Camera, which was a pinhole camera built into a smiley face brooch. Does what it says on the tin. It works as a spy camera, can be pinned to clothing to capture video or stills on a micro SD card, but not exactly the most subtle of spy cameras. Bright yellow, never going to draw attention to itself, is it? This isn't a show, no, that will make you feel a little lost if you're still to find out what the zone system is all about. It's really about how we feel when we make pictures, what it does for us, what it does for others. And in the 6.6 billion people on the planet can make a picture with something, there's a lot of us about to walk with on our photo walk today. In the mailbag on the show, we're on some travels with postcards from around the world, a letter on making the last pictures of life next to the first pictures of a new life, particularly pertinent at the moment. Jamming on the school bus with people about to become very famous, getting up at silly o'clock to make friends with the best light of the day, and 500 metres plus of huffing and puffing in a climb in the lakes with a special guest who, if you listen regularly to this show, you will know very well by now. So, shall we walk then? Checklist out. Coffee and Garibaldi's packed. Check. Boots on and laced. Check. Spray cans. Should we find somewhere to graffiti? Legally. Check. Walking trousers or shorts? Check. Epsom salts for the bath following a big climb? Check. Spare batteries? Check. Memory cards or spare film? Check. Earbuds in? Check. Lens caps off. Let's walk. If you buy, sell or want to trade camera kit and you live in America, the UK or Europe and you haven't been to mpb.com yet, then make it something you do today at some point. I know I've said this before, but I genuinely mean it. I use mpb.com to buy kit myself because I really do sincerely subscribe to the thought that if experts are going to check the equipment thoroughly, which they do at MPB, and they're going to provide me with a guarantee when it comes out to me, which they do at MPB, which, let's face it, is not something you find with kit when you buy online usually, everywhere anyway. The kit will, for me, it's going to be like buying new. But actually, it's going to make me feel good about buying in this circular economy that we mentioned, which is, next to price, a really important thing too, clearly. That sustainable way of buying kit is becoming more and more relevant and important. But this week, I also want to lead you to MPB's original content pages on the website, which is full of kit tips, because sure, even I, with my less tech head on, needs a helping hand to simply say, come on, Neil, have you ever thought of X? So that's handy, yes, but equally their interviews on the blog, or original content as it's known, introduces me to a stack of photographers that I didn't know about, and ideas I think I can be truly inspired by. And I spied this, which I can't believe I haven't told you about before. I'm going to link to it on the show page today on photowalk.show. It's the work of somebody called Luke Saxon, who takes, from what I've seen, it's usually 2 pictures, and makes a narrative within one final photograph. So you've got a big picture made of 2 pictures. Let me describe one. In the lower part, there's one I was looking at when I wrote these notes. In the lower part of the frame, there's a tree. So the trunk and the very start of this very luscious, opulent, green, fully leaved tree. And then, midway up, the second photograph appears and it overlays over the first photograph. And this one is barbed wire with a plastic bag that's been caught in it. But it perfectly finishes the tree, the top part of the tree. Yeah, I don't know what came first, actually, and how he saw this or pre-visualized it, but it's amazing, so much so that I have written to him to see if he might come on and tell us more about this idea of experimenting with pictures to create a story that I wasn't really expecting it at all. It's really fired up my imagination. I'll link to it today, so you can go and see this and more of MPB's original content. And of course, I'll link to mpb.com, who are the number one people to go to if you want to buy, sell and trade camera kit in the UK, the US or Europe. Come on, pups. He's walking through all the mud. You all right, Bonnie? Say hello. He just wandered off. He's still not lassie-like in his appreciation of show business. Actually, I wanted to start this week's show with a letter received only in the last few days that followed another I was due to read from the same writer, Kara Garda, in Denmark. So I've joined them both together, and it follows the passing of our Queen, and he wrote, "Dear Neil, thanks for the podcast and the amazing photographers you keep finding and presenting. It's been a great pleasure to listen to the very likeable Kieran Doherty. Hearing about his tender and caring relationship with his elderly parents was heartwarming. And of course, the photos from the project were equally touching." I'll remind you of the story by linking to it on the show page today at photowalk.show so that you can see what Kara's talking about there. Belonging to the current sandwich generation myself, says Kara, I recognise the urge to use my camera to document the last years of my parents' lives, just as they photographed the first years of my life. You know, Kara, I've never thought of this in quite the same way, but it makes so much sense what you say. It's a circular notion, definitely a cyclic nature of life. It really is. I recognise the urge to use my camera to document the last years of my parents' life, just as they photographed the first years of mine. And at the same time, He says, I'm photographing my sons as they become fathers, and my grandsons too as they grow up. This August, my mother-in-law passed away aged 96. My wife, who is a vicar, had promised her to conduct the funeral herself. She arranged for the whole family, sons, daughters-in-law and grandsons, to join us for a trip back to the rural place where she grew up and spend a day together before the funeral in the westernmost part of Denmark, where it meets the North Sea. The next day, virtually all of my mother-in-law's numerous children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, or grand-grandchildren, as you say here, friends, spouses, relatives, they all followed her to the grave. She was buried next to her husband, who died 13 years ago. Their grave is in the corner of the cemetery, just a stone throw from the farm where they lived and worked the land for more than 50 years. It's the place my sons remember from so many family visits when they were children. I've never photographed a funeral before, but I'm glad I did. The wonder of life becomes very physical when a daughter buries her mother with her children and grandchildren at her side. I think we all felt sadness and equally gratitude, and I know my mother-in-law would have been grateful to see the whole family together. So I attach 6 photos, and I think it's appropriate to call the series Cradle and Grave, as they span 4 generations: life and death, sorrow and joy. Best wishes from Cara. So yes, I received that letter right at the end of August, a few weeks back now. So with the sad news of the Queen passing, Cara followed up with another short letter. Hi Neil, he said. I was saddened to hear about the passing of your Queen. It was very appropriate that you shared your thoughts on her death at the beginning of the latest episode and ended the edition with a toast. We did, didn't we? It felt very poignant, you know, at the end of last week's episode, when we ended with that toast that was made by one of the Photowalkers on the Photowalk retreat, Paul Hudson. Queen Elizabeth's long reign has been a constant in so many lives, not just in the UK and the Commonwealth, and although not necessarily unexpected, her passing adds to the sense of uncertainty in these troubled times. Your Queen was but a month younger than my mother-in-law, who was, as you know, buried in August, in the letter we read out, of course, a moment ago. But this Saturday, my wife christened our youngest grandson. I thought I'd share a follow-up photograph from that occasion, in addition to the photos in my previous letter. It seems, Neil, that life indeed does go on. Cara, thank you for both your letters. And yes, it seems very appropriate to follow the initial letter you sent with the one that I've just read, and I'm going to share both sets of pictures. Well, the initial 6 that you sent in, and the additional one on the show page today for episode 334. And can I say, as somebody who's photographed a few funerals now, that your compassion in these pictures was so very clear to me, and you'll see it if you go to the show page today. You balance the solemnity of those days with a very clear, sincere story of life too, which is a very hard thing to do, particularly if you're photographing at something very personal like a family event. And I can see you were present as a photographer, but equally, and perhaps more importantly, a member of the family as well. And your pictures really show that to me. Those pictures are what having an inquiring photographic mind such a privilege at these times, aren't they? Even in the hardest of moments. And then that follow-up picture of the christening. Well, I know I say it each and every week, but please do follow the link in the app today, or just pop across now if you can while you're listening to photowalk.show and the episodes page. See episode 334. Sterling work, really important and compassionate work. In a word, perfect. I think that sums it up. I know we've spent weeks doing small revisits to what is now in the top 10 of downloaded episodes since starting this show a few years back now, but here are a few words from our friend, almost a regular co-presenter at the moment, it seems, Kieran Doherty. He spoke in one of our episodes, episode 322, about his time photographing the repatriations of soldiers who lost their lives in Afghanistan, and how photographing these events was clearly a photographic challenge, but one that he approached with a dignity and a sense, if you will, of, well, to quote the song, circle of life. A piece of music I remember selecting from my own mother's funeral. And if you're listening to this podcast on the day that it's posted, we still have our Queen's funeral to come on Monday. So it also seems appropriate when we talk about dignity and covering events that clearly are challenging, clearly that need a real sense of, I'm going to use that word again, compassion. Here's Kieran Doherty.
There was no sound, it was just utter silence. I remember getting out of my car. What I was very conscious of at the time was the clattering of photographers' ladders on one side of the street. And when that bell tolled, which meant the cortege was about to arrive, you could hear a pin drop, and then a photographer's ladder clatter, and then you heard shutters going off, and it was, one of those moments you thought, wow, okay, I mean, there are families on the other side. The ladders were so that you could get over the hearse to be able to photograph the families' reactions. Yeah. I just thought, this could be a very delicate situation, and that was my first experience of Wootton. And I ended up shooting a picture of a very young girl just holding some roses. It was just a bunch of roses.
And I've seen it.
Have you seen that
it's
one?
A very potent picture.
And I shot that picture, and I thought, you know what? Maybe this is really interesting, because when the cortege moved on, the sort of street just sort of came alive again, and there was noise and hustle and bustle.
So it all went back to normal.
And yes, it very, very quickly went back to normal, and standard bearers packed up their standards, and they went, and everybody moved into the car parks, and people started chatting. And so I went down again, only was there very early. I thought, I wonder what the street's like before, because I'd only ever experienced it literally as the cortege was about to arrive. And I realized it was almost like it was almost like a party atmosphere. Really? So people were down there, and they were meeting people they hadn't seen in an awful long time, and there were people in the pub, and they were having a drink, and just the normal things that people do when they get together. There was just, and then the families would come and join later, but it was very, very different to the moment when the bells tolled. And I thought, right, this is what I want to try and capture. I want to capture the human side to this, so it's not necessarily always about the hearses and the soldiers and the sadness about it. There were so many elements to that story that I wanted to capture.
The words from Kieran Doherty, and the letter before from Karagada, who is one of our amazing extra milers, which is what we now know as our patrons, those who support this show. You are, quite frankly and honestly, the engine room that drives this show, and without you and the growing support, honestly, there would be no Photowalk. It sounds almost quite an industrial Photowalk today. I mean, I know we have the waterfall, which you might be able to hear behind me slightly, but in the distance you'll hear the hum of some building work going on, some sirens, and I'm back walking along the towpath, which I love so much. It's a bit urban, it's a bit countryside. I haven't been making many pictures, so I must remember to do that. I was thinking today on the show page, my somethings and nothings will probably be the pictures I reference later on. Say no more for the moment. Should we get a picture? This is, hang on, this is where Barney usually jumps into his first pond. Do you want to go in, Barnes? Yeah? Go on, go in. There we go. That's nice, isn't it? That's better. So thank you to our extra milers, and to thank you, I upload some extra private shows for your ears only, a midweek unplugged interview and a weekend diary piece. Some thoughts about the week and the week to come. And when I'm on me travels, as I will be actually, later on, well, next week, starting from next week. And also some interviews, bits of interviews that you haven't heard before, some little extra nuggets. Added up, actually. Have you done enough then? Had a good swim? Yes, thanks. There's another pond up here. Yeah, added up all together, there are now 100 plus extra shows and bits to listen to or read. Come on, Barnes. No, hang on a minute. Hold that thought. Don't have that. That's horrible. It looks like a... No, come away. He's picked up some sort of medicine cup. Come on, this way. Things you pick up, honestly. It's the Extra Mile tomorrow, and next week, as I alluded to a moment ago, the Extra Mile will be from France. Probably it will be from France, I think almost definitely. I'm travelling there Wednesday night. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to record something prior to there, so it's going to be an On Me Travels. I've got a car kit all sorted out. It's going to be an On Me Travels diary piece. And I'm going to be meeting up with an extra miler called Craig Hughes, who is going to be second shooting a wedding event with me. And he's going through the process gradually of making photography in France his career. So I think that may be a super one to listen to if you've ever thought, I wonder if I can put some extra euros in front of this thing I love. There we go, we've come to the second pond. Go on, jump in. Go on then, go on. He's had he's got a short coat at the moment, which means he doesn't quite become the mop that he becomes if he's got his long coat. Come on, pups, this way. Barnes, come on, up. Good boy. Right, the first of my guests soon. First, let's do some quick fire letters. 3, shall we take 3? From you, from your travels. These pictures that I mentioned will be on the show page today. We'll start with Paul Friday, who's in the UK. First, a big thank you for the podcast, says Paul. I'm a recent convert, so I'm listening to them as they come out and working my way back through the catalogue. Oh, you got a fair few to work through. There's a few hours on a long motorway in France, because that's what I'm going to be doing, podcasting all the way down, either speaking to you or listening to some. So you definitely tell a good curly dog story, says Paul. Thank you. Well, I think that's a good thing, isn't it? Anyway, these are pictures of what I made on my rambles this weekend. No artistic or technical merit, but part of my wanderings. The first is the local pond. It's a medieval carp pond and was the source of fish for the local castle. Even then it would be a brave yokel who ate a fish caught in the ooze. I would have said in medieval times, you'd have to be a daft yokel, wouldn't you? That's the sort of thing that they used to... Well, you know. It wasn't exactly a slap on the wrist, was it? The pond, though, was dried up in the drought, but then I was diving in a flooded quarry. Oh, you've got what we refer to in the UK as big kahunas. I don't think I could ever dive in a quarry. Too dark, not sure what's down in the depths, but you did. Anyway, I was diving in a local flooded quarry and found a large koi carp. By large, I mean it would probably weigh the same as my dog. Who knew that carp migrated? Well, I didn't know that either. Pictures on show page. Thank you to Paul. Bill Darby is next. He's on Cormorant Island in Vancouver. Attached, he says, is a something and nothing from a recent visit to the village of Alert Bay. That's a fantastic name, Alert Bay, on Cormorant Island. Equally as fantastic, just off the east coast of the north end of Vancouver Island, even in decay, because this is a picture of decay, as you'll see. There is hope for today, and they posted a sign to that effect. While Alert Bay once enjoyed the benefits of being centrally located to a significant commercial fishery, an industry much changed and reduced over the years, it now finds itself as a central player in the process of reconciliation and repatriation through celebration of the Namgis people and more broadly, and I hope I get this right, Quack Waka Waka culture. I'm pretty sure I'm there. Alert Bay finds itself at the crossroads of two cultures and is helping to forge a way forward through knowledge and understanding. Theirs is a fascinating story and one that's worth the time to come to know. I made many images this day, says Bill, but out of an understanding of how much has been taken from the Namgis community, I purposely avoided photographing the iconic Namgis cultural artifacts found throughout the community. Otherwise, hope all is well, he says, and Sabarkalot is keeping you busy. He is. He's just about... No, not in there. That was timing. No. Not in there. What's that in the background? Can you hear that? That is a big engine. Can you hear it? His ears have come right up, Bill. I can hear it, I'm not sure, he says. So yes, he is keeping me busy. What an incredibly potent portrait-orientated image of the scene. It really is. And that river mist coming in, it's quite incredible. Go to the show page today and you'll see exactly what I mean. And then, America. This is one from Joe Harding in rural Missouri. And excuse the language on the show page, but I will share exactly what the sign in Joe's picture said. Hi, Neil. I enjoyed the recounting of your trespassing experience. Oh, yeah. That's a few months ago now. It made me think about some of my own Photowalk adventures. I usually plan to visit some type of nature reserve near me, hit the road early in the morning and drive there, the most direct route I can find. And after my walk, I meander my way home. I live in Missouri, which is in America land. I know that. And there are some amazing farm roads that wind their way through the most rural parts of the state. They're mostly smooth, gravelly, windy paths that occasionally lead through the tiniest of towns. Sometimes they suddenly devolve into cow paths. One of the attached pictures is shot through my windshield, and it's a road that, according to Google, is a truck route. Really? I've seen the picture, and you will if you go to the show page. Is that a truck route? I've seen the size of trucks in America. That cannot be a truck route. The other attached picture is one I shot today during my drive home. On behalf of the civilized inhabitants of this country, apologies for the coarse language. To his stroke her credit, all the words are spelt correctly. Yes, they are. Come this way, pups. Actually, just up here. I'm right at the end of the letter, but this is very, very good timing. It could have been better timing had I waited a minute or so. But up here, there's some graffiti that I regularly photograph. Here we go. Pups, come on. This way. It's just under the railway bridge. And there's some more just alongside the railway bridge. Let's get a picture. This would make sense for the show page today. My somethings and nothings to go, of course, with the fact that we're talking about graffiti with one of my guests. Where is it? It's right at the end. No, this one's better. Let's take this one. And I quite like it because it's half in light. Put your letters down. Half in light and half in shade, which makes for a much more interesting photograph. Here we go. Shutter speed 1250, f4, 160 ISO. Anyway, back to Joe's letter and the language on the sign. I have to wonder, he says, how the sign's creator would respond to a request for a picture. Thanks for the show, look forward to it every single week. See, now you're not only having to go to the show page for links, you're thinking, what is it on the sign that Neil can't read out? See, gotcha. Quite amusing, actually, and thank you, Joe, for it. I tell you what, I would not be walking across that field, that's for sure. Thank you for your letters. If you'd like to send one in where you've been, and we're starting up a new feature soon called Postcards, which, of course, if you listen to the assignment right at the start of this week, then you'll know more about. Send your pictures, your postcards, your words of where you've been travelling. Can you hear him? Barney, this is not the moment. Come this way. No, not in there. Send them to stories@photowalk.show. stories@photowalk.show, which is the new email address. The old one still works all the same, by the way. 2,000 pixels, if you can manage it, wide, or if you're sending them from your iPhone or your smartphone. Other flavors are available. Just send them best quality, please. Right. As another train whisks past, let's go from photography to graffiti next.
Art or vandalism? When it comes to graffiti, the law is clear about defacing property without consent.
Anything that they can get their hands on to vandalize, they will.
You see it all over the city. What some call art, police say is a crime.
Banksy isn't someone who creates pieces of art for people to buy and sell. He's a street artist.
So I'm not sure we do enough about art. And art is just such an integral part of photography. So it's been a bit amiss of me, and certainly it's been missing from the show. But Martha Cooper is who we're going to talk about, and she's our photographic conduit really into this world of graffiti. She's an American photojournalist. She worked as a staff photographer for the New York Post during the 70s. She's best known for documenting the New York City graffiti scene of the 70s and then the 80s. But she's still doing it today, by the way. She hasn't stopped. She's described as an ethnographer above photographer for reasons that will become very clear during our conversation. In 1984, a very special book came out, and I bought this book from my parochial town that I was living in at the time, because I was fascinated by subway art. I'd seen it on various visits to the US and New York in particular. I know it's not something that is just particular to that city, because we have subway art as well, underground art, arts within the towns and the cities and the underpasses and overpasses where we live. But there seemed to be something very particular and unique to the way that it was being practiced in America, New York in particular. So I bought subway art, and that book that Martha made is widely regarded now very much as a Bible of this genre. But it's not Martha that we're talking to after all this. No, it's Roger Gastman, who's been the curator, if you will, of a new book called Spray Nation, which features so many of Martha's pictures never seen before that she made in New York in the 80s. Roger is, however, very well placed to talk to me about this book. He's also painted and sprayed his fair share of subway cars and walls. He is described as a leading historian of the culture as well, so a break from tradition in a way for this show. But I'm really drawn to making pictures of graffiti, as I've probably just demonstrated a moment ago when I was reading out those letters that we'd received. And I can hear you saying, good job you like photographing it, Neil, because you can't spray a tag for toffee. Yeah, reference show page. So let me introduce to you Roger Gastman for part one of our conversation about Martha Cooper's latest photography book. Our Rock Enterprises is important in terms of why we're talking together about Martha Cooper. I think we probably need to expand on what our rock is and how it fits into this conversation about Spray Nation, and of course the photographer and your friend, I would add, Martha Cooper.
Sure. Well, Our Rock Enterprises is a silly name of a company I started when I was 19 years old. I was running around painting graffiti, started making all kinds of different projects, working with some brands unintentionally, and people would write me checks once in a while. My mom, who had a really good business sense, said to me, you should probably start a company to protect yourself and make this all a lot easier. Right now it's a company I do just more artist management and special projects out of. The company I do most of my work out of now is that we have is Beyond the Streets, and that's what we published the Martha Cooper book through and did the project, and then teamed up with Prestel to make the other version of.
Would you say that your time really is more spent now looking after artists than it is actually being an artist?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess my art in a sense is being able to corral, manage, see visions, and bring together groups of these incredible artists. They all have different, things that make them tick, different attitudes, different reasons they want to do things. And it's managing expectations and respecting where people are currently in their career and celebrating what they've done.
Now, you're described as equal parts disruptor as you are a historian. And they're two very strange bed partners. But it kind of makes sense when you're talking about graffiti, doesn't it?
Through my life, as I'm sure you'll hear people say here and there, right place, wrong time, or right place just a little early, where if I would have done something several years later, it could have been, incredible windfalls and completely different, but I wouldn't have been, I don't want to say I'm the first person to the party, but, early on to the party of really trying to push the culture and come up with the exciting tidbits for everyone that they can relate to. And we've been disrupting a lot in a sense by doing that. But at the same time, really making sure that the historical pieces of graffiti, street art, gang culture, things that are pop culture today that used to be, subcultures, are all documented, archived, scanned, saved from basements and floods and fires and all of those things that you hear too many stories of that happened.
Of course, gang culture, street art, vandalism is another word I've seen used, and we'll come back to that in a moment's time. All those cultures come together to form street art, but some people feel a bit uncomfortable about it, don't they?
Anything illegal often just makes people feel uncomfortable. I often describe a difference between graffiti and street art, and this isn't 100% always the case, but graffiti is writing your name over and over again for the sake of fame, letter based, often very stylistic scrawl. And street art often is pre-created and put up with paper and wheat paste stencils, things like that. And a lot of it is very edgy and political based, but you put up a stencil of a nice kitty cat or black Labrador, and so many people are going to point at it and say, "Oh, isn't that cute? I want to take a photo of it." You do a tag across the stop sign and someone's like, "F that, look at that vandalism." And it really changes the emotion. And so much of what we do comes with so many emotions attached to it. Even when we're talking about music culture of years past, I've so many times hung incredible old flyers of photography of subcultures of music and brought the people back together that haven't been together in 30, 40 years. And they're looking at flyers and posters and pointing and crying and just the emotions it brings up because it's, memories back to childhood or different years or friends no longer with them and everything else. So, same thing with the graffiti and the street art and the vandalism, like it conjures up so many emotions.
I guess on this side of the pond, we'd think of street art then, the way that you describe the difference between the two as someone like Banksy, to use a very popular name.
Sure. I mean, who's an incredible artist and genius, much more than an artist. He's, to me, he's just a genius and gotten so many things done, created, at the same time, tell important stories and messages. But there's always a little bit of wit and humor.
I love the way you describe the feeling of spraying for your first time with much passion. A bit like a photographer who pulls a print from the developer, but you describe it as feeling this surge of electricity. Why did you take to the art? What was it that drew you to it?
I just loved doing it, and I liked being around my friend group. I was never an incredible graffiti writer. I got better as I kept going, and if I kept doing it, I probably would have become a lot better. And as much as I loved it and still love it to this day, it was really the act of, being out there doing it, being along the train tracks, being in a train yard, climbing a rooftop. It was the mission. It was everything about it. It introduced me to so many of my friends that I still have today. And it taught me so much about different cities, different cultures. It was my education.
When you talk about the artists that became your friends, though, and the graffiti scene, this may seem a strange question, but I've wondered this when I've seen graffiti next to graffiti and some graffiti over graffiti, because it's a tight canvas much of the time. Let's take a railroad car. It's got finite space. How do the artists respect each other's space? How competitive does it become?
There's a lot of unwritten rules, and depending on which graffiti artist you're speaking to or a graffiti vandal, because a lot of people don't even want to be called artists. The rules are different. What era did you grow up in? Who taught you? Are you 12 years old or are you 62 years old? There's 50 years of age difference in people out there doing this because it's not a new culture.
No.
So the rules are different. Different people will go over different people. Different people will not care and go over different people. It's a sport in a sense, and it's not always friendly. It's very competitive.
And that fascinates me that you say graffiti artist or graffiti vandal. So some really don't like being associated with the word artist, with the A word.
No, a lot of people to this day, they don't want to be an artist. No matter how much I might or other people might think what they've done is art, they don't want to be in a gallery. They don't want to paint a canvas. They want to go steal some spray paint, steal some markers, whatever it is, by any means necessary, go bigger, go longer, and keep their name up there more than anyone else has. And their mission is to just write on everything they can.
I think it's a good time to talk about Martha Cooper, staff photographer at the New York Post. But I wonder what it was that drew her. You're a good friend of hers now, so you must have talked about this a lot. But what drew Martha to document graffiti? There was plenty of it, obviously, in New York, where she was. But what was it that she thought, that is what I want to do? Because eventually she was able to leave the Post altogether, wasn't she?
Absolutely. As much as I love Martha and can tell you so much about her, I also still don't want to butcher her story. But she tells it best, but I know she's not here. Martha was an incredible photographer and still is an incredible photographer. She was so often interested in more than just, let me shoot a portrait of this person. Let me show the entire environment. Yeah. And that's what continued to make her an incredible photographer. And she was interested in youth culture, youth movements, politics, and the cities around her. And she used her jobs that she had, in a sense, as one, pay the bills, of course, but two, access to continue to see what's going on, get places, equipment, you name it, to get there. And it was also a means to print stories early on. I know this is, I don't want to put words in Martha's mouth, but so many of the artists I work with and things we've been able to do through the years and just interviewing them is their photos being printed meant so much to them. Yeah. And validated what they were doing, whether they looked at themselves as vandals or artists. And I know for photographers, being able to continue to see their work getting out there versus just shooting it means something also. And Martha was someone who was being printed often and had an eye and kept getting out there and figured out there was this incredible youth culture. Her black and white photography of, street play from the late 70s and the early 80s around New York City is incredible, of kids with makeshift toys and the things they've made through the streets. I mean, that's just as incredible as the graffiti work. And it all captures the environment. And that's, what Martha did.
Do you think that's why she's described as an ethnographer rather more than a photographer?
I think that's fair to say. She was telling the story of the movement. It wasn't, here's a close-up picture of marking on a wall. Sure, sometimes it was. Let's get up close and document it. But more often than not, in the photos that really stand out, it's just a great photo. And then you also, of course, see the graffiti, but you see the skyline, you see this, you see that, you see a lady in the window of a train, whatever it is, and that goes through so much of her photography beyond just the graffiti and the street art photography. She's an incredible photographer.
And you mentioned one of her books, Subway Art, is like the Bible of graffiti art, isn't it, for many?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know the stats, but I would have to guess it's probably one of the most stolen books in the world. From bookstores and school libraries and places like that. It's the book that changed the lives of so many artists around the world. Subway Art, Spray Can Art, Style Wars, and Wild Style, the two films, those four pieces change the way you view the landscape, and not just the urban landscape, because this culture has spread into little cities around the world. It's not just big cities. And Subway Art that she put out in the early 80s on Thames and Hudson changed the course of culture today.
What's she like as a person?
Martha's, very determined. If there's a photo she wants, she's going to get it. if that means, she, elbows herself to the front, if that means she gets up at some crazy hour or waits it out, she's going to get it. And that's been an attitude she's had of determination. And with that, of course, has to come patience. She is a good friend and very generous. So many of the artists through the years, and I guarantee this goes much broader than just the graffiti culture. When she's photographed them, she shared the imagery. Someone's doing projects, she shares the imagery. She works with people. She listens.
And my guest, Roger Gassman, returns in a little while. The book, by the way, Spray Nation, is now available, and I will link to it on the show page today, which is a fantastic book for all the reasons mooted, but also because I find it, deeply fascinating to read about and see pictures that were, for all intent and purposes, going to be left. History may never have found them. Here's a letter and accompanying pictures from Drew Brown. The pictures are on the show page today. We know, Neil. we had an inkling you were going to say that. Hi, Neil, says Drew. I hope you're okay. Can I just thank you for featuring my photo story in one of the latest shows? This would have been a few months ago now. And also the Ogwin Valley photos made it into the show notes. Well, of course they did. They were fantastic. I was very excited to be a part of the podcast I enjoy so much. You're very generous. Thank you kindly. Your topics that you talk about bring back so many memories, and actually the recent mention of televisions in the UK only having 3 channels made me laugh out loud. In our house, the regular call was, "It's your turn to turn the telly over." Well, these are times before we had remote controls then, aren't they? Hey? Growing up, watching Pot Black snooker on a black and white telly was challenging. Oh, Pot Black. God, that brings back memories. My dad loved that. Pot Black. What's that famous quote from snooker's most well-known commentator? Who was it? Ted Lowe, wasn't it? Ted Lowe. He said something along the lines of, he's going to try and pot the pink ball. For those of you who are watching in black and white, the pink is next to the green. That was something like that, wasn't it? It didn't really translate in black and white language, did it? And Drew backs it up, actually, when he remembers Match of the Day with for those watching in black and white moments, which would have been describing jersey colours as the lighter shade, instead of just saying blue or red or green or yellow or whatever. I enjoyed the interview, he said, with John Mayer, the ex-punk rocker, now a photographer, as I remember having a Buzzcocks lapel badge on my school blazer at St Augustine's in Manchester. Would you have been allowed? We weren't allowed to have badges, pin badges on blazers. Ooh, that would have been a detention. It was a tough school, my school, I think, as you're getting the idea of. Ever Fallen in Love was constantly played on my local radio, says Drew. Also, little did I know, at the time in school, but the 2 lads I watched jamming on guitars at lunchtimes in the common room had a pretty good career coming up. Johnny Marr and Andy Rourke. My word! Johnny Marr and Andy Rourke from the Smiths. Blimey. That would have been fascinating. You should have recorded it. Oh, it's too late now, Neil. Besides, iPhones weren't invented. Oh, fair dues. My wife, Sam, absolutely loathes the sound of the Smiths. She can't bear the sound of, she can't stand the voice, first of all, of Morrissey. Heaven knows I'm miserable now, which I love. I love all those songs. I like a good wallow. A Smiths album, Hatful of Hollow, that was the one. Hatful of Hollow. Songs to wallow by. Sometimes you need a song to wallow by. They took those guitars everywhere, says Drew, back to the letter, and occasionally gave us a jamming session on the packed school bus home. That is a showbiz story. That really is. That you used to listen to a great part of the Smiths on your journeys home from school. Claim to fame or what? Anyway, back to photography, and I've attached a couple of my favourite Peak District photos this time. A temperature inversion. and an incredible light beam, both taken at Winnett's Pass in the Peak District. Oh, beautiful part of the world. That is definitely worth a photo walk sooner rather than later, I think. Both these shots were taken at silly o'clock in the morning. Is that an official number on the watch dial? But so worth the early rise. In fact, I wouldn't have experienced such beauty without photography, as I'd never visit Winnett's Pass otherwise. It was the excitement of catching a sunrise that took me there at such an hour. However, on the sunbeam image, the sunrise didn't happen. All the photographers had packed up, left. But then, all of a sudden, the light appeared through the pinhole. Absolutely unforgettable sight, and you can see this in your picture on the show page. Amazing. Best wishes from Drew. I tell you what, Drew, it's always worth the wait. Always worth the wait. I'll pop your pictures on the show page, and since you mentioned my chat with the former punk rocker, although I guess once a punk rocker, always a punk rocker, John Mayer. Let's hear a few moments from my conversation with him. It was episode 288, called Punk Rock Star to Photographer. He is now this fabulous photographer who spends his life living in Scotland's wild and often mysterious lands, and the wonderful island of Harris in particular, making fantastic pictures.
You know, it took me a long time to figure out. I mean, I didn't use a camera. We moved up here in 2002, and I didn't use a camera literally until 2009, I think, because I wasn't motivated to go out taking pictures, because I hadn't figured out a way of taking anything that would be of interest to me until I stumbled into that world of long exposure night photography. And yeah, that's fantastic, because that's going out under the light of a full moon. It's very quiet around here. You've not got cars whizzing by you all the time, and just taking one single picture, you might be stood there for 6 minutes. That's how long the shutter's open, just waiting and waiting for that time to elapse before you might have something that will make a useful picture. So it is, very sort of relaxing way of going about things, I suppose.
Why night photography though? What got you into that?
It was seeing a documentary on TV with the photographer that they were following around in the deserts of California. There's a guy called Troy Paver. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he uses a lot of coloured light. You'll see that in my early night photos, because basically what I was doing was aping what he'd been doing. It took me a while to learn what I was doing. I was kind of just doing it, not understanding what was going on, and massive novelty factor involved, because when you take those shots, of course, if you're adding light into the scene, the end result, that still image, is something that you physically haven't seen with your eyes. So that, it is a bit of a novelty, and it's easy to get carried away thinking, oh wow, look what I've just made. But when you sit back and analyze it more, in depth, and think about it more, you think, well, actually, it might just be a shot that's got some weird lights and you think it's cool. But with practice, I learned that what I got interested in was the way I moved away from using the coloured lights, but I learned that I could use light in a way to make the picture almost more three-dimensional. And when you've got the advantage of several minutes to work with, actually painting that light in, it gives you the time to do that, much more so than if you're trying to create that kind of work, a lit shot in daylight where it has to be done in a snap of a second.
I do so love this part of the walk along the canal side. A lock filling up with water. Wonderful. Anyway, John Mayer, my thanks to John and that episode. I absolutely adored our conversation. I loved in the episode where he went to the drums and belted out a rhythm for us. Just perfect. It's one of those moments where you think, hang on, this is John Mayer, famous drummer of famous Buzzcocks, and he's playing the drums for me. Wonderful. Last week's episode was the Photowalk retreat, and I hope you enjoyed hearing what we all got up to, me and the housemates. There was Lynn Fraser and Steve Brand, Patrick Britschke, Andrea Gilpin, Teddy Stanner, Paul Hudson, and far less trains. I think we've made up for it this week. We saw one train the entire time, and there was this wonderful train line, by the way, that ran through the Highlands where we were, and all week I was hoping to get a train picture for my son Thomas. You know he loves train pictures. And all week, nothing. In fact, driving up along, what is it? Is it the A? I'm going to get the A road now. Is it A6 or A9? I can't remember. I was on it for hours, and I followed this train line all the way along. And I thought sooner or later I'm going to see a train. Nope, nothing. Nada. Nothing at all. But today I think we're making up for it. Come on, pups. He's found stick of the day. Go on, bring it with you. Bring stick. Come on. So yes, last week's episode was a Photowalk retreat. And what a week. Formed some great new friendships. And it went so well. I hope you agree if you heard it and enjoyed it, or if you came on it, that we've decided to set dates for the next one already. It'll be in September, and it will be one day longer. So you can join us on a Sunday, and we start activities on the Monday, and the photo walks on the Monday, and then you leave the following Saturday. The date's then 10th to the 16th of September 2023. And I have just five places available. Two of those definitely have gone, and I have a feeling that one more is about to. As I got a message as I was just coming out of the car, I think. Oh, Neil, you tease. So very much looking forward to it. There will be an official show page that I shall publish, and you can see what plans that we have. But on the way home last week from Berkshire, which is a 10-hour-ish drive, I stopped off at the lakes, pretty much halfway down, 5 hours in. The Lake District. When I say the lakes, I mean the Lake District, which is surely, along with, of course, parts of Scotland that we went to, one of the most beautiful parts of these isles. Now, I wanted the recording that I'm just about to play to you to sort of reveal my special guest. But I feel because it's mentioned, there's a particular part of the conversation that mentions health, that I need to perhaps fill in some gaps for those that are fairly new to this podcast, because my midway guest, quite literally midway point on my journey last week, is a photographer friend that we met on this show last year in January, Niels Armelinks, who makes the most incredible pictures cycling up the great peaks of the mountains and the, I suppose, mountainous hills of the Lake District. And he found photography particularly really through a diagnosis, after a diagnosis that came, as it would for anybody in these circumstances, as a real shock when he was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer of the bowel and was given 5 years to live. But we're 6 years later now, 6 years. And Niels, as you're about to hear, has many plans, despite some news of late that you'll be aware of if you follow him on Instagram. It's photography, it's cycling, and it's his young family that forms part of this incredibly inspirational strength that he has, both physically and mentally. And of course, yes, there will be dark times. Of course, inevitably there will be. But honestly, inspirational, yes, he is. And so many letters following Neil's appearance on the show to share those thoughts as well. I spoke to him in episode 279 originally. It was titled A Life Well Lived Making Pictures, if you want to hear the whole show. So sorry for the spoiler, but I'm aware that we, as I say, do have some new photo walkers with us since that episode back in January, right at the head of the year. So let me transport us both to the foot, that's you and I, to the foot of a mammoth but beautiful hill in the lakes to meet up with, I think, a very special friend. It's not like I just popped out to the shops and met this man, because he lives 4.5 hours drive away from me, usually, but coming back from Inverness via the beautiful Lake District, look who I've bumped into, Niels Armelinks.
Hello.
Oh, well, I didn't exactly bump in. He said, come and have a cup of coffee. So So I can't really say that I just bumped into you as I was driving through. It's lovely to see you.
Likewise, Neil, yeah.
And then he said, let's go for a little walk. Now, my idea of a little walk is Barney, round the Nature Discovery Centre, along the canal. You know this because you listen to the podcast. And take a little jaunt, maybe meet a couple of people on the way, say hello, share some dog biscuits. Round about an hour and a half, job done. No. Niels goes for, I can't describe this any other way, but a full-on 4.5 hour yomp up 500, what is this, 500 feet or me?
550 metres, 550 metres above sea level. Hey, but the view's worth it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we've come down the other side now, but we looked at a reservoir. What reservoir was it? That's and I must remember to process this picture for the show page. The reservoir is entirely out of water.
So that's Hawes water. So it's on the east side of the lakes, and it feeds big cities like Manchester and Liverpool.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it as low as it is now. It was bonkers. I mean, you could actually see the road that leads into Mardale, the village that was flooded when they built the reservoir.
Yeah.
And we desperately need some rain by the looks of things.
So you can sometimes, does that town show entirely?
Not entirely, but sometimes the rooftops sort of start poking
That's
out.
spooky, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're planning some special stuff at the moment, aren't you? Because I know we've talked about your health in the past. I didn't want to make this a conversation about your health necessarily. Share if you feel you wish to, but there's a very special project you're working on at the moment, Rider Resilience, which we did touch on, didn't we?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So I suppose my health is what it is. We always knew it's not something that's going to be easy to be cured, but actually, as of late, the original treatment sort of stopped working. They've put me on a different treatment regime, and it's really kind of focused my mind in terms of what I want to achieve. And one of the things is the kind of photos that I've been taking and the writing that I've been doing seems to have inspired quite a lot of people. A lot of people have reached out to me off the back of it, and made me think, well, actually, can I broaden this out? Can I interview people who have also, taken to riding bikes to get them through times of adversity? Can we share their stories, and it not all just be about me, but create a bit of an inspirational library, so to speak, and then at the same time a little bit of a movement with people affiliating themselves with Rider Resilience, hopefully raise a little bit of money that we can then invest back into other causes with a similar ethos to ours. So it's a little bit of a project of mine at the moment, and talking to obviously Neil as well about potentially doing some spoken word stuff, podcast stuff, and how best to get the word out there.
Andy featured last time when we talk to each other. Just remind us of Andy's story.
Yeah, so Andy McKenna is he's a mountain bike, or he was a mountain bike guide up in the Scottish borders. He's got his own guiding business together with his wife. I can't remember exactly how many years ago now, but he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and obviously, it being a degenerative disease, it doesn't really play nicely with riding mountain bikes. He struggles to find whether his feet are actually on the pedals and to hold on to the bars, etc. But that being said, him getting out on the bike still fills him with life, and you see him getting out and sort of documenting that, and he's beaming when he goes out. And in a lot of ways we're very, very similar. So one of my first sort of candidates to go and speak to will be Andy. We're going to go out on a ride together, share some stories, kind of talk about how riding bikes and getting out really kind of still fills us with joy, and how it helps us to rationalise what we're going through, I suppose.
The biking is clearly very important for you, your mental health, and also your physical health, but also the photography.
Yeah, I mean, the biking bit, like you say, kind of builds that mental and physical resilience. The photography, it helps us sort of slow everything down. So rather than just us, riding top to bottom in one big hit, we sort of slow down and really take in the scenes. It really sort of, turbocharges all the senses. You really kind of take it in a little bit more. And then the beauty of it is you end up gathering loads of amazing footage and content, and then when you've got a down week and actually you're struggling with treatment, or you're sort of mentally struggling a little bit, you've got all this stuff to go back through and kind of relive those occasions, and it nearly sort of stretches out that whole experience. So for me, actually documenting those rides, it's it makes the ride itself longer, but then it feeds into the weeks thereafter as well, and it allows me to sort of share what I've been up to, which often, I suppose, quadruples the effect of a single ride. It's a great way to play it out, I suppose.
We were having a chat about video, and one thing we talk about a lot on the podcast is this legacy process of making pictures, and in your case this is going to be a video story, and you're starting to record stories for your children on video, which is, when you told me that, I thought, oh wow,
that's top secret, Neil.
Was it?
No.
Do I need to edit that bit out?
No.
Quick, rewind.
Well, they don't know yet. I don't think the wife knows it either. It's a little bit of a side project.
I don't think those three listen to this podcast.
No, not yet. Anyway, I might have to get them to dial in.
And they can miss this episode.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, we always still hope for a magic pill that will cure all of this. But my kids are young; they're 6 and 4, and at the moment they're both just starting to learn to read. And there's a couple of books that I remember reading as a kid that really kind of resonated with me. And one of them is Danny the Champion of the World by Roald Dahl, and the mischief they get up to together. The son and the dad.
I didn't read that one.
Oh, it's they're basically going to poach a load of pheasants, and it sounds like the sort of stuff I would have probably done with my dad. But it's a story that I've always remembered. So I've started reading that and kind of recording myself on video, just in case, one day if I can't read stories to them at bedtime, actually can still in a way tune into their dad, which sounds a little bit morbid. And then the other one, I learned a lot of my English by reading the Harry Potter books. I started off and I didn't know what a broomstick was, and you sort of keep reading and eventually you figure it out. And I think one of the first kind of bigger books that I'll read to them as well is the first Harry Potter book, because it really kind of helped me to learn English, really, which is bizarre.
Really? You learned English through Harry Potter?
Yeah. Well, I moved to the UK. I spoke a bit of English when I was 12, because in Belgium everything is subtitled and not dubbed.
Right.
So quite you've got a good basic understanding. But then like at the time Harry Potter was huge, and I just picked up one of the books and started reading those.
Where we are at the moment, just to bring it round to where we've been, I have to tell you, Niels looks like he's just walked down to the local shop. I look like I've been away on expedition for a month. It is amazing. This is just, you live in the most incredible part of the world. And last week I was in Inverness in Scotland, and we were on the Photowalk retreat, and Lynn Fraser, who lives there, said to me, because we recorded a couple of pieces, and she came to me one evening, she said, you know what, I'd like to record my piece again, because I think I made it sound like I was just a bit blasé, and it was I'm just driving along through the most wonderful countryside in the world, and it's just there again. Do you ever get, because of your cycling and photography, actually, you probably appreciate it more, don't you?
Yeah, I've always been really, really conscious of how fortunate I am to live here, to have this playground. And, I honestly don't understand people who live in Kendal, where I live, who've kind of grown up here, and they just see the hills as a barrier because they might need to get to the other side of the Lake District, and it's a windy road, and you think, you do not realise how blessed you are to live just on the outskirts of, one of the most beautiful national parks in the world. I mean, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Yeah, I'm very aware with how blessed I am, and actually sometimes I wish I just had more time to spend more time just yomping through the hills day in, day out, because today has been a new valley that I've never been to in the 10 years that I've lived here.
I'm so pleased I got to appreciate that with you. Neil said to me when we spoke earlier, he said, right, well, we could go here and here and here. And we met a friend of yours that pointed us in a different direction in the end. But then he said, if you feel really energetic, we could go to High Street. And I thought, High Street sounds all right. Just pop up and down, maybe going to Acosta. The High Street you're talking about is the one over there, though, isn't it? Which I'm pointing to. You can't see through the podcast, but it is exactly how high?
Well, I can't give you an exact figure, but it's in the 800 metre category. Yeah, it's one of the higher ones in the Lake District. I mean, it's got an old Roman road up it, so we've got no excuse. I think next time we're just going to go and have to tick that off, Neil.
High Street.
It
does not look like any high street I recognise. Oh, you do the other thing, which is amazing, by the way. Van lifing, yeah. How much has that opened up your life?
Oh, it's not just about actually driving off and having these big week-long trips in the van, but just having these little, it sounds cliche, doesn't it, calling them micro adventures, but looking outside going, look at this wonderful sunset. I'm just going to drive out and we're going to cook our tea out there and enjoy, watching the light change across the landscape and just have a couple of hours out of the house, but you've got all the amenities that you've got at home effectively with you. It's absolutely superb. And, sometimes if you fancy a bit of a change of scenery when you're working from home, I have a work from the van day, and, you just park up somewhere, get tethered in, and just have a different office view. I mean, it's got everything I need. I can make a cup of tea. I've got a toilet I can use if I need to. It's got a diesel heater, so yeah, it's super comfortable. It's very much a lifestyle vehicle, I suppose.
I'm sold. We're actually seeing each other, aren't we? In about a month's time, we both go. What's the show called? It's the Caravan and what is it?
There's two, I think, at the NEC, but this one's called the Motorhome and Caravan. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's basically the Caravan Nerd Show, isn't it? We're going to find out all the details about what's hot in the world of caravans and motorhomes, and just see if we can improve in any way.
I'm taking not my wallet, but Nils's.
You won't find much there.
And that's Neil's Armalinks. Absolute joy to spend time with him. And when I got back from my drive, there was an email practically awaiting me with some words from Nils. Hi Neil, really enjoyed today's catch up. I did too, Nils, thoroughly. Thanks for stopping by. My pleasure. He bought the sandwiches. I felt that was entirely wrong. I should have been buying him the sandwiches as payment for the original interview. Anyway, but thank you. Yes, thank you for the excellent egg and cress sandwich. Very British. iPhone dead cat ordered, he says. I'm fully inspired to start recording some sounds now. Please could you remind me of the app that you used? Yes, we were talking about podcasting and his rider resilience, or it might have another title, this podcast, not quite sure yet. So yes, the app. In case you're thinking, when we record this podcast, that I go out with a huge amount of recording equipment, I don't. I use an app within the iPhone that I record into called Alon Dictaphone, A-L-O-N, Alon Dictaphone. When we were walking, we looked down, we went over that big peak, that yomp that we took. We looked down over Mardale, which is the reservoir that feeds Manchester. It's so low. The water, it was really surprising. I mean, there's parts now you could just literally, there's one part you can almost walk across. Neil says, I think if we'd have gone down to the lakeshore, we would have seen old walling poking out from the shallow waters in the shape of the village. We probably would have done. I'll pop Nils's pictures on the show page today, and I'll match it with some that I made as I walked with him as well. There are some portraits that we made of each other. He looks far more camera worthy than me, I promise you. But here's to believing, here's to futures, and here's to friendships. And I know you've just heard from Nils, but a few more words from my original conversation with him from our podcast back in January.
Given my conditions, I'm a bit of a sucker for kind of like, looking out for the best possible kind of like weather conditions and really trying to capitalize on it. So when you can, see that there's going to be cloud inversions and you can probably get above it, it gives you this kind of weird kind of like outer world experience. You sort of feel like people are in a different world to where you are if you're above it. And, when things work out with work, if I've not got too many work commitments or, treatment or hospital appointments, it's really fulfilling to find like a group of friends and to get above it and to kind of capture, that kind of like mountain light where it just looks so different. I suppose there's always that kind of unknown whether or not you will actually get through it, because the hardest thing I find is to kind of forecast how thick the cloud base might be. So like last Friday, a friend of mine, another kind of photographer, reached out and said, the weather's going to be amazing on Friday. Have you got any time to take off? And we can go and see if we can get above it. And I kind of looked out the window in the morning and it looked like the cloud base was really quite high. You can sort of see some of the Lake District fells from this window where I'm sat now, and I could see that they're quite high up. So I started looking at various webcams and I thought, I could invest a lot of energy here into kind of going up this mountain and actually finding that when you get to the top, you're just stuck in pea soup, and you've kind of put all that effort in for nothing really. But then as it turns out, as you kind of like walking through the cloud, you can sort of see it starting to thin out, and you look up and you can nearly see a little bit of blue kind of poking through, and that really fills you with a lot of excitement, because you think, I think we can make this. I think actually the mountains are high enough to to burst through it. And then it becomes this weird kind of, I don't know, I sort of associate it a little bit to like a masking tool in like Photoshop or Lightroom, where it's very selective, only mountains that are over like 800 meters were poking out. So it's only the big ones that were kind of seen around you. And it was stunning. Yeah, it was a cracking day. And it, like I say, a lot of people would have kind of looked outside and gone, oh, I'm not going to go out today. So you end up just being there all by yourself on this little mountain island in this sea of clouds. It's beautiful.
Neil's arm links, and I will link to his episodes and a little bit more of his work on the show page today. Well, we've been talking about graffiti, and in particular, let's just get through the gate, and in particular, the new Martha Cooper book that is out, which is called Spray Nation, all about the graffiti in the New York City subway and elsewhere of the 80s, and those pictures that had my guest not inquired with Martha may never have ever seen the light of day. And there's a link today on the show page for that particular book, and also for Martha, her website, and my guest, Roger Gassman. Here's part 2 of my chat earlier this week with Roger.
I've read, Roger, that Martha Cooper, the photographer, is still hopping on flights all these decades and decades and decades later to make pictures of graffiti and the street artists at work.
Absolutely. She's one of the most traveled people I know at 80 years old.
I know. It took a lot of guts, didn't it, to go into the train yards at night often to make pictures on her own.
I mean, I think about things I've, to make it about me for a minute, of course, I can't stress enough, like at the time in the 90s and early 2000s when I was doing a lot of graffiti and going into train yards and things like that, I just didn't think about it. Like, of course I knew it was dangerous, but we were living the moment and doing what we were doing, and it was wonderful. And I look back now at things I've did, and I'm like, that's dangerous. Would I do that today? Yeah, if it made sense, sure. But like, I would definitely, know now what you didn't know then. But she knew what she was doing. She wasn't, the kids doing it, and she was putting herself in a lot of positions that, weren't safe, with a bunch of people that she probably didn't even know their true government names. It was the graffiti name or the nickname they went by. And to this day, Martha is still capturing those moments in a lot of those places, which is incredible.
Well, one of those making work in those sightings was a street artist called Dondi, the late Dondi, who was very celebrated as a graffiti artist in the mid-70s. I think it's fair to say that he, Roger, was somebody who was pivotal to a new photographer making pictures in the genre to get her noticed.
He was definitely one of the early artists that helped her connect with the culture and the insiders. But there's, multiple people that she met that were instrumental early on, but he was a very important figure in the community that she captured some imagery of that is, iconic, and her imagery just helped capture so many early moments and get it out there. And they spread, those photos helped spread each other's gospel in a sense, if that makes sense.
It does. And Spray Nation, 1980s graffiti photographs by Martha. I know a lot of these pictures, pretty much all of them, have never been seen. And I want to come back to how on earth you chose them. But why the 80s? Because her career spreads obviously decades and decades. I wonder why this book was specifically focused on the 80s.
Good question. We could go make 50 books with Martha's archive and probably be scratching our head. How are we going to make the next 50 with what she has? And, Martha, what I was saying is a documenter, but also she's an artist who is not just a documentary street photographer. That's the last thing I want to call her. But of course, she has great snapshots of work that no one else has, that the artist wants to see. And then she has incredible photography and photos that capture the entire scene. Yeah. And there's definitely differences in that. And of course, one of the reasons Martha's been so celebrated in the community I'm in is the graffiti photography. And while she's still out shooting it and made several projects of the new work, this work of, late 70s and early 80s that she has such a arsenal of, in a sense, is what people continue to want to celebrate. And, there's myths about, there's stories about, and where's the photo or it didn't happen. And you know what? Martha's one of the only few people that might have some of those photos in a sense, because if you didn't live it and you weren't there, you didn't see it. And a lot of these people are in their, late 50s to, late 60s at this point that participated in that culture. So also, memories fade. Tall tales happen over time, and people, unfortunately, are no longer with us. I've had the, pleasure of being a friend of Martha for a while now, working on a lot of great projects with her. And we were at dinner with her one night several years back, and I had great access to her archive also, thankfully. And I said, hey, I know you've put out books. You're constantly doing different projects. How about one last book of the archive of what's still there? I know there's a lot more there. And she honestly said, sure, but it's a lot of work to scan it, organize it, figure out, in a sense, the snapshots from the true great photos and figure out what's what. I said, yeah, you're right. And she, wants to spend her years traveling and seeing and making new, not only revisiting, the history, which I respect and most true artists want to do.
So it was a lot of trust here, because you were digging, legend has it, you were digging into boxes with stuff that she'd even forgotten existed.
Absolutely. So I thankfully have a lot of trust with her and other artists because we've done right by them through the years. I said, I was there, we were at dinner, it was myself and, my girlfriend Amanda, and we said, fuck it, I'll do it. And she said, great, start tonight. So after dinner, around 9:30 or 10, started digging in her studio. Around 11 or 12, she went to sleep. By 3 a.m, we got tired, went back to the hotel and went to bed, and did a few more days of it and then a few more trips of it and scanned thousands of slides, found multiple boxes of things where she had cast them away in the 80s when she shot them because the windows were down on the train, the windows were buffed out, things like that, where at the time she would just get another photo where they weren't done like that. So those weren't as exciting at the time to her. But now they're incredible time capsules. She also redid her office, and in doing so, went through a storage unit where she found even more things like that. So we really got to see a lot of things that when she thought she was scraping the archives for stuff before, had kind of forgot existed. As when I go in my storage, I forget things existed. And that's how the book came to be. It was a lot of editing. It was a lot of back and forth. And we present a lot of incredible photography of the era.
I wonder whether it was a golden age of graffiti as well, because as I look through the book, these are the sort of pictures coming out of New York in particular where I think, yeah, that looks like a golden age.
That depends on which generation of people you're speaking to.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tough question to answer. Yes, Martha captured a golden age of graffiti. Me, who I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, right outside of D.C., to me, the early 90s of DC in my mind is a golden age because of what inspires me to do everything before I know the book Subway Art even exists.
Yeah.
But if New York City spreads graffiti around the world, Subway Art spreads graffiti around the world, those things that are captured in her photography of that era, yes, is a golden age of graffiti that inspires the world, no question.
I'm glad you mentioned 90s because Rudy Giuliani popped up and he created this quality of life crime, and he called graffiti a menace to society, and he targeted graffiti best part 3 decades ago. This would have been when you were really, I know you weren't based in New York, but as a writer on the arts of this, how much do you think he affected those who are making this art? Or did he actually, by extension, just make it even more exciting for them?
I think in general, graffiti artists, graffiti writers, there's always a new generation of them. There's always the new 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid that just doesn't care about the law, doesn't know who's the mayor, doesn't know who the police commissioner is, and they're just out writing to write, and that's what they're going to do. If you went and asked a bunch of the late teenagers at the time about who was doing what. Yeah, they knew there was a vandal squad. Sure, it makes it a little bit more exciting. And it also weeds out a lot of people that aren't too smart at it. Of all the incredible artists that tell their chase stories that they got caught or they did this and kept doing it. Imagine how many artists there are that were never hearing of, that got caught the second time they went, scared shitless, scared straight, and never went back. So, it weeds things out.
Is there Martha Cooper art that exists alongside her photographic stuff?
Martha is a lot of good secrets here and there. We might find some more in her archive one day.
That's a question for Martha, probably, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Just finally, I read on your website that you have a life plans bit. I liked your website, and I love the life plans bit. There is something that there isn't art, it isn't graffiti, it isn't culture, but it is a lot of fur. Your life plan is to invent a new Labrador colour. Now, being a man of much colour from your life-making art, what's that Labrador colour going to be?
I can't let that stuff out of the bag right now, because what if someone else does it before me and they can claim it?
Are you that nuts about Labradors, really?
Yeah, they're great. I have an incredible one right now named Zoe, who's with us everywhere. She's fun and just, loves everything and everyone. For the last 20 some years, I've usually had one or two labs, and they're always rescues, and everybody loves them, and they keep everyone in high spirits. A lot of what we do here too is care for animals and donate to animal charities and things like that. So big animal people.
Oh, Barney's delighted to be back on the photo walk, aren't you, Barnes? Look at him. Even had his portrait made today for a link that I think, I won't know till I get back, I think I forgot to press the record button on. No, Neil. Yeah, it was a particularly, not necessarily a really funny moment, but it was a reasonably contextually important moment because of a tag, or certainly some graffiti I found on the back of a sign as I was walking along the towpath. I may just have to put the picture on the show page, but you won't have the context of the of the moment that we found it and the portrait that was made of Barney. Oh, never mind. Perils of recording on location. Anyway, absolute joy to talk to Roger Gassman today. And for links to Roger and other photographers that you've heard from or about today on the show, Instagrams and the websites that we've mentioned, go to today's show page, which is episode 334 on photowalk.show, or follow the link in the podcast player. Also, it would not be a show without your letters and your pictures. Oh, hang on a minute. Barney's got, what have you got in you? He picks up loads of these burrs, and they look particularly uncomfortable. Are you all right, darling? Let me just take that off. There we go. All gone. Come on, it's gone now. No, it's gone. Seriously. Believe me. There we go. Yeah, so if you'd like to send in your pictures or your words from your travels, then do send them into the email address, which is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. Pictures 2,000 pixels wide, please, if you can drop them down to that width, or if you're sending in via your smartphone, just best quality, it'll be brilliant. Tomorrow on the Extra Mile, I do intend to replay a little more of the conversation from the retreat with landscape, seascape, and photographer of peace, Margaret Soraya. I meant to do it last week, but we kind of started talking about other stuff, didn't we? And certainly a picture pilgrimage that I published in last week's Extra Mile show for patrons. You'll know what that was if you remember. So that's what's coming tomorrow, plus a few more of my journal and diary pieces. Our play-out song today is from Andrew Word. It's called Between the Days, which I know I've featured Andrew before, and I've featured this particular song too, but I'm coming back home to it today because I think it matches the tone of some of our letters, and certainly my journey's break to meet our good friend Nils, and we'll hear that song from Andrew Word in just a moment's time. But this week's postscript, our PS for the show this week, rather, is a thought that I think applies to both photography and art. And we're talking about graffiti, aren't we, and street art today. And I think it applies to both. It's from somebody called Montana Dennis, who is a photographer based in Ventura County, who said, with creating, we are literally bringing something into existence that didn't exist before. And whilst that might perhaps play more to photography, I'm hoping that it works for both today. Here's Andrew Word.
See the light of the stars, hear the sound of the unseen in the empty fall. In the silence, listen. May it lift your heart and move your feet to run again. May you wander far. You will not be lost within. And you'll see the light, though the darkness seems so strong. In the deepest night, let love lead you. Come and rest your head. Here time is an ocean. There's peace and grace. Mercy's born between the days. And you'll see the light, though the darkness seems so strong. In the deepest night, let love lead you home. And you'll see the light, though the darkness seems so strong. In the deepest night, let love lead you home. Let love lead you home.
Andrew Word with Between the Days. And that's it for this week. My thanks to Roger Gastman, Kieran Doherty, John Mayer and Niels Armerlinks, mpb.com, and those who are extra milers or patrons, which you can join through the link on the website photowalk.show. Tomorrow, extra milers for you. More from the Scottish photographer at peace with the landscape and life, Margaret Soraya, recorded at our retreat. School detention, and my portrait of a man I met on the rail tracks. Monday, usually, there is an assignment show, but as a mark of respect at this time of mourning and on the day of the funeral of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, instead, a few thoughts and memories helped by a friend of the show and some words from a guest this year that we've featured, Rankin, following his experience of photographing the most photographed woman in the world. That's Monday. Links and further research to what you've heard will be on the show page today, and you'll find a handy link in your podcast player app to that. And my thanks to Neil Ford, Emily Renier and Andrea Gilpin for your industrious help as ever. I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
Barney, not through that. These are the bits you don't hear when we're recording this. What walked along here? Is that a dinosaur? Or is it... I think it's a cow that somehow got its way down here. How on earth did a cow... Look at the size of that, Barnes. Don't know. Don't you dare eat it. Round. Come on. Move on. There's nothing to see here but a great big patty from a dinosaur. Right, where were we? Yeah. Today we've been talking about graffiti, and in particular the new...
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.